Welcome to the Alberta Legislature for Monday, May the 7th, 1990. I'm David Carter, Speaker of the House, and member of the Assembly for Calgary-Egmont. After question period today, the estimates of the Department of the Solicitor General will be up for discussion. This is day 23 of the 25th of 25 days that are spent on main estimates. This evening, when the House reconvenes at 8 o'clock, they will be dealing first with second readings of bills. Number 19, the Financial Consumers Act, 22, Agricultural Development Amendment Act, 23, Agricultural Statutes Amendment Act 1990. After that, they hope to go into Committee of Whole to deal with Bills 2, 9, 10, 15, 16, and 18, and then probably around about 10:30 tonight, third readings dealing with number 11, Petroleum Incentives Program Amendment Act 1990. Let us pray. At the beginning of this week, we ask you, Father, to renew and strengthen in us the awareness of our duty and privilege as members of this legislature. We ask you also, in your divine providence, to bless and protect the Assembly and the province we are elected to serve. Amen.
Introduction of visitors, presenting petitions, reading and receiving petitions, presenting reports by standing and special committees, notices of motions, introduction of bills.
To the opposition.
Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to introduce Bill 284, the Code of Ethics and Conduct Act. Mr. Speaker, this bill would define real and apparent conflicts of interest and govern business inside the Assembly, outside it, and when no longer in office. Section 24 would amend the Alberta Energy Company Act so members would be prohibited from voting if shareholders. A conflict of interest commissioner would be established as an officer of the legislature similar to the Auditor General, Ombudsman, and Chief Electoral Officer. And finally, Mr. Speaker, penalties for violating the Act include fines of up to $10,000 and disqualification from the Assembly or public office for up to 7 years.
Hear, hear.
Leader of the Opposition has introduced for first reading Bill 284, Code of Ethics and Conduct Act. Those in favor of first reading, please say aye. Opposed, please say no. So ordered.
Bill number 284, Code of Ethics and Conduct Act, introduced by the Honourable Member, Mr. Martin, is now read a first time. Tabling returns and reports. Introduction of special guests.
Minister of Forestry, Lands and Wildlife.
Mr. Speaker, I'm sure you noticed the red shirts in the gallery today, and the shirts or the uniforms are a very fine youth organization. These are the junior forest wardens who are today represented by the Bauer family, and I'm sure you also noticed that Bertie the Beaver is also in the gallery, and he's a symbol of the Alberta Forest Service. The Bauer family is a junior forest warden family, and Mrs. Bauer is a representative of more than 700 volunteers who support junior forest warden program, a program which will celebrate its 30th anniversary here in Alberta and the 60th anniversary in Canada. And there are 118 junior forest warden clubs operating in 85 different communities in the province in total. There are some 3,500 junior forest wardens aged 6 to 18 who are involved in learning, understanding, and appreciation of the forest environment. And this week, National Forest Week, Mr. Speaker, the junior forest wardens have left on every member's desk a practical gift to remind you of the excellent program of Forestry Week. Mr. Speaker, I'd ask the Bauer family and Bertie the Beaver to rise and receive the warm welcome and appreciation of the members.
Attorney General.
Mr. Speaker, it's my pleasure to introduce to you and through you to the Assembly a number of students from the New Norway School, 24 members, escorted by their teacher, Daryl Nielsen, and by parents, Mr. Dale Enerson, Miss Wendy Sonnenberg, and Miss Louise Crandall. I'd ask that they all stand in the members' gallery and receive the traditional welcome from the Assembly.
Member for Edmonton Mill Woods.
Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to introduce to you and the other members of the Assembly this afternoon some 48 young students from Wineloss Elementary School in the constituency of Edmonton Mill Woods. They're accompanied today by their teachers, Mr. Glenn Sharples and Mr. Bob Fu, as well as parents, Mrs. Rolls and Mrs. Harris. I'd ask them to now stand and receive the warm welcome of the members of the Assembly.
Member for Edmonton Calder.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is my pleasure today to introduce to you and to members of the Assembly a group of social workers from Local 6. They are seated in the public gallery, and I would ask that they rise and receive the warm welcome of the Assembly.
Ministerial statements. Oral question period.
Mr. Speaker, to the Minister of Labor. Mr. Speaker, it flows from Friday in question period, where I quote from Hansard, Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Labor said, the International Labor Organization says, if there is no strike legislation, then you must have compulsory arbitration as a process to balance. We have that, and it is a fair process, and it does work, Mr. Speaker. Let me say this does work. Well, Mr. Speaker, I found that interesting, and we've got now in front of me the ILO report, Mr. Speaker, and it's not quite the same as the minister said, Mr. Speaker. Surprise, surprise. Section 48.2, they're talking about specifically, Mr. Speaker, and I quote, the committee hopes that provisions such as these, which have undermined the union's confidence in the arbitration system, which is meant to compensate the employees concerned for the lack of the right to strike, will be reconsidered in consultation with the parties and appropriate amendments made with a view to enabling arbitrators to examine all matters in dispute, Mr. Speaker. And my question to the Minister of Labor, why has the Minister so deliberately distorted the ILO's position last Friday?
Well, Mr. Speaker, as we're talking about the labor legislation in Alberta, we have to keep in mind the reasons behind it, and there are balances. Always when you have two parties at the table, there is a third party at the table, and that is the public. One always has to maintain the public interest. And in that regard, when the government is at the table as manager with its employees, we have looked at maintaining the services to the public where they can get them nowhere else. In this instance, they can go nowhere else for the help they need. And in that regard, we have said, therefore, we will maintain the services as essential services, but we will put in collective bargaining procedures. Interestingly enough, I recently went back to the debates in this legislature when, in fact, the bill that we're talking about now as law was debated. And that was one of the main points that was made then. It's a question of balancing the public interest as a whole with the interests of a few very important people, in this instance the social workers, 80% of whom are employed in this province. I might point out, Mr. Speaker, that across Canada in the 10 provinces, 5 provinces have no strike legislation. 5 provinces have legislation that permits their civil servants to go on strike. 2 of the provinces that do allow their civil servants to go on strike are BC and Saskatchewan. And in cases, in comparing the lot of social workers in BC and Saskatchewan to that of Alberta, we find that, in fact, the salaries are more or less on par, and in fact, although you can take averages in places in here, by and large, the caseloads are about the same as well. So I would say that...
Thank your Honourable Minister. We're going to have some more questions, obviously. Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the minister conveniently skirted around, Mr. Speaker. She said on Friday very clearly that the ILO had said that these were fair and just laws. I quoted it to her, Mr. Speaker.
They never did.
And they didn't say that, Mr. Speaker. And what they said, if you're going to have arbitration, if you're not going to have the right to strike, then you have to have the right to fair arbitration. We do not have, Mr. Speaker, and I want to ask that minister, dealing with caseloads and organization of work, how can she say it's fair when they don't have the right to even negotiate their working conditions, Mr. Speaker?
Hear, hear. As I was saying, Mr. Speaker, in comparing as to whether our legislation works or doesn't work with the process that we have, I think to compare our situation with BC and Saskatchewan is a fair comparison because they have a different process than we do. And in fact, the results here are comparable to the results in the other two provinces. So we do have a fair process, and we do have one that works. That supports my statement on Friday. I might also point out, Mr. Speaker, that it was us who put the caseloads on the negotiating table. We said right from day one that is a key issue in the discussions and what turned out later to be a dispute. And we put a mechanism to resolve that situation on the table from day one. It wasn't until a few days before the social workers illegally walked off the job that they in fact put a counter-proposal on the table. I want to put out that they did put a counter-proposal on a task force which would resolve these caseload measures. And we said, terrific, great. Now let's, because there's some differences of opinion as to how this mechanism would work, now let's get down to fine details and come to an agreement as to how that mechanism would work. At that point they said, no, we're walking off. We then said, let's get a mediator in here because we want to settle the caseload issues. They said, we don't want any mediation. We have, from the beginning, wanted to negotiate with the social workers that very key issue called caseload. So far, they have not done so.
Mr. Speaker, they have to have a proposal before there's mediation. It doesn't make any sense.
That's right.
Now, Mr. Speaker, in terms of the board, look, you've had how many studies? You have a warehouse full of studies about caseloads, Mr. Speaker.
Right.
And is it not the case, to this minister, is it not the case that what the union wanted was that it would have some clout and that they would have time and that they would follow some of the recommendations and the government didn't want to give them any power. They're just going to have another study. Isn't that the truth, Mrs. Minister?
Here, here. Mr. Speaker, there were two proposals on the table, one that we had put there from the day one that the social workers put there on the last day. Never in negotiations when you open up very rarely do you open up with the same proposal. There were questions of details that had not been debated, but they walked off. They walked off their jobs, they walked away from the table, they refused mediation. We never had a chance to come to some of those details to get some form of mechanism that would resolve the question. But from the beginning, we have said we want to have a negotiation regarding the caseloads. The social workers must be part of the solution to that question. And we're still saying that to this day. We're still at the table hoping they will come back.
The Leader of the Opposition.
Direct my second question to the same minister, Mr. Speaker. Yes, they have to be part of the solutions. That's why they want to negotiate it as part of the arbitration process. That's my point, Mr. Speaker, and it's going to get worse.
Great.
It looks like it's going to get worse, Mr. Speaker, because if the Province's nurses and social workers aren't enough proofs that Alberta's labor laws for public service are regressive and wrong and not working, Mr. Speaker, then maybe the brewing trouble with the province's corrections workers will prove to be the straw that breaks this government's back, Mr. Speaker. Local 3 of the Union of Provincial Employees has been trying since January to negotiate a new contract with the government. The major issue in this case, Mr. Speaker, is pensions. But the problem is the very same again, Mr. Speaker. These ridiculous labor laws are stacked in the government's favor, so now we're going to have possibly more provincial employees may resort to walking off the job as early as this week. These are the labor laws you're talking about working? Now, my question to the minister, now it seems possible that we could be adding Local 3 to the list that already has social workers on it. Is the Minister of Labor still going to go on to this charade and stick to her line that there's nothing wrong with this government's labor laws?
Mr. Speaker, how can we negotiate with Subsidiary 3, the correctional workers, when the President of the Alberta Union of Provincial Employees arbitrarily suspended negotiations on all 11 subsidiaries, in addition to Subsidiary 6, which is the social workers? How could we have progressed any further in that in the last few days? Fortunately, Mr. Speaker, fortunately, and I'm very pleased to hear that she has done that, the President today wrote a letter, which we received, to the Public Service Commissioner, suggesting that, in fact, she removed that artificial suspension for both Subsidiary 3 and Subsidiary 10. We haven't responded to her by way of in writing and said we welcome that, and we have also suggested, in fact, that we immediately return to bargaining for Subsidiary 1, which is Administrative and Support Services, and Subsidiary 8, Educational Services, and would hope, in fact, for the other 7 subsidiaries that she come back to the table immediately.
Again, the minister misses the total point. There's none so blind as those who will not see, Mr. Speaker, because you're dealing with precisely the same problem again. Under Section 48.2, under the arbitration that the minister says is fair, they can't deal with the organization of work like the social workers dealing with caseloads, and under there it says D, pensions. They can't even negotiate, Mr. Speaker. Will the minister now admit that that's the problem, that you can't have serious negotiations if the government doesn't have to even negotiate these issues, Mrs. Speaker?
You're here. There is no law, let me say this again, there is no law in Alberta that says you cannot negotiate these matters, and in fact we are negotiating or attempting to negotiate a mechanism but for caseloads with the social workers. We want them to be part of the solution. As to the other negotiations, how can we negotiate if the President of the Alberta Union of Public Employees arbitrarily suspends all across the board for all the employees who are not involved in this illegal walkout?
Mr. Speaker, when the minister stands up, and I have it right in front of me, Section 48.2 says clearly the organization of work, the assignment of duties, the determination numbers employee of an employer, pensions, almost everything. They can't go to an arbitration board with that, Mr. Speaker.
Right.
What it really says is the government can do whatever they want in negotiations. Now, if you have one side with all the clout, how do you think you're ever going to get people to the bargaining table?
Here. Mr. Speaker, I think the opposition leader has confused negotiation with arbitration.
Questions are to the Minister responsible for social services. The Minister of Labor has quite correctly labeled or identified the key issue in this strike as the issue of casework overload. The Minister of Social Services has even agreed on a number of occasions that there is overload. Mr. Speaker, the government and the social workers went through a 5-year process, a joint consultative process, a committee looking at this issue of casework overload. But over 5 years, in fact over 2 decades, nothing has been done to alleviate that problem of casework overload. Now, Mr. Speaker, my first question to the Minister is this. Given that this is the key issue, and given the likelihood of great difficulty ensuing when the courts again revisit this matter today. And given the fact that the Minister of Social Services agreed to consider using a special resource person in the Dean of the Faculty of Social Work from the University of Calgary, would the Minister confirm today that he would agree to set aside the need for a strike, call upon this special resource person that the Minister has himself used in this ministry, or I should say the ministry has used, call on him to resolve this issue of casework overload and end the strike today?
Mr. Speaker, no one individual is going to be able to resolve the caseload situation, but I do want to correct some of the comments made by the leader of the Liberal Party. He began by saying that nothing is being done about caseload, and nothing could be further from the truth, Mr. Speaker. We have taken a number of issues, a number of steps in recent years to address caseload, and I want to again outline some of those initiatives for the benefit of this Assembly, because I want them to be very clear. When it relates to income security, if you go back 6 years ago, our caseload, in the past 6 years, our caseload has increased by 28,970, which is about a 52% increase. At the same time, our staffing has increased from 716 full-time equivalents to 1,132 full-time equivalents, for a 58% increase. So our staff is growing at a faster rate than our caseload. But further to that, Mr. Speaker, on the income security side, we've also implemented a differential use of staff. Initially, it was piloted in a number of our offices, and it's now being phased into all of our offices. We haven't been able to do it as quickly as we'd like, but again, we've made substantive steps in implementing these new initiatives, combined with new automation, and I've had a chance to speak to frontline workers who have been a part of this, and they tell me that it's made a vast difference in their offices and that the process is working. I'd also want to point out, Mr. Speaker, in 86-87, average cases per staff, 119.9. In 89-90, average cases per staff is down to 90.7. On the child welfare side, Mr. Speaker, on the child welfare side, again, a number of initiatives. I regret that we're very close. My department tells me they're very close to presenting a caseload model for my approval and for implementation, and it's regrettable that we've had these interruptions. But I want to point out again the initiatives there and the steps that we have taken. Again, caseload is down. May of 89, 9,900. February of 90, 8,900. A 10% decrease in terms of child welfare caseload and face-to-face investigations.
Honourable member, perhaps we can hear more.
I've just been handed a note indicating that the courts have imposed a 45-day no picketing injunction. My question to the minister is this: it seems to me that there is a serious lack of faith on the part of the social workers, the government workers, in not believing that this casework overload is going to be solved. Now, it's my understanding, Mr. Minister, that a special internal investigation was held, agreeing and seeing that there was this casework overload and setting certain capping limits. The question is, will the minister agree to impose those capping limits that have been set by an internal investigation so as to at least show good faith to the other side on this issue now?
Well, again, Mr. Speaker, I want to re-emphasize that we are anxious to see this issue resolved. But again, I have to challenge his preamble, and I didn't quite have the opportunity of finalizing my comments as it relates to the child welfare side. And I'd want to point out that our average in Alberta today, province-wide, is between 29 and 30 cases per worker. Now, in the city of Edmonton, we recognize that it's 40. So obviously there are some inequities in the system, and we need to address that. We know in the Calgary region that it's just under 25. We know that in terms of a provincial average that it compares well with other provinces, with Ontario and BC also around 30. We also know, Mr. Speaker, that the Child Welfare League of America, a very well-respected organization by professionals, indicates or recommends a caseload of between 25 to 35. So we're within their standards on a province-wide basis. But yes, there are some inequities within the system, and yes, we want to resolve it, and yes, we put forward one recommendation on the negotiating table, and if social workers will come back to work, and if social workers will come back to the negotiating table, I am confident, Mr. Speaker, that these issues will be addressed. They'll continue to be addressed in a very meaningful way. We'll continue to make progress, and it can be resolved in the interests of Albertans and in the interest of the workers themselves.
Mr. Speaker, an injunction has been granted. We've got the other side saying that they refuse to go to work. This is going to be a very, very strained period for the next hours and days. Mr. Speaker, the provincial legislation that this House has passed says that there shall be established a special association to look after social workers. That legislation says that they shall determine the code of ethics and work standards for themselves. Mr. Speaker, the representatives from that association just said last week that they cannot live to those standards. So the law is being breached. The social workers' law is being breached. Mr. Speaker, how can the minister condone the breaching of laws on one side and then say, well, you're going to have to go to jail or you're going to be fined on the other? How can...
Thank you very much, Honorable.
Mr. Speaker, the minister and this government does not condone the breaking of any laws. And that's why, again, we are so anxious in the interests of those social workers themselves, Mr. Speaker, because I know that feelings are running hard, I know that emotions are running high, and I know that at this time approximately 50% of our caseworkers are out and about 50% are in, and I know that when we see 100% in again, that 100% are going to have to be able to get along with each other. So we're anxious, in their interest, Mr. Speaker, to see this thing resolved. We're anxious to see services returned to those Albertans that rely on them on a day-to-day basis, thinking of children again in our care, and seniors and handicapped and others. And we're anxious, Mr. Speaker, again, to get on with meaningful dialogue. And it can't happen until social workers go back to work and come back to the negotiating table. And I'm confident that if they will, Mr. Speaker, that we'll do our part to make sure that there's meaningful and fair negotiations at those tables and that these issues are addressed in a meaningful and fair way.
Extend call by Edmonton Avonmore.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is to the Minister of Transportation. Mr. Speaker, the Department of Transportation has had a program in place since 1976 that has involved the 4-H clubs across this province in clearing refuse along the roadsides of our primary highways. This program has had many positive aspects to it that all of us are aware of. However, we have now experienced 2 tragic fatal accidents to our young 4-H members while they're carrying out this service and responsibility. The last of these fatalities took place in my constituency and involved a young 8-year-old boy, Spencer Gregson, who resides in the town of Raymond. Could the minister advise what measures he's prepared to take to avoid any further such tragedies as this program is carried out?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I'm not in a very good position to suggest that we had a loss of a young lad on the 4-H cleanup campaign, 4-H and JFW cleanup campaign of this past Saturday. Young Spencer Gregson, an 8-year-old, was killed in the area just south of Lethbridge. As a result of that death, I have asked the Department for the police reports, and I have also indicated to my Deputy Minister in the Department that we will be doing a complete review of the program, all aspects of the program, from the safety aspects to the volunteers who so capably have done a good job, along with the parents. A year ago, for example, there were 11,000 young people out on the highway, 4,600 adults working with them, and it's a tragedy when something like this occurs, and I certainly want to express our condolences to the Gregson family for the loss of their young son.
Supplementary, Mr. Speaker. Although quite likely the program is almost completed for this year, has the minister considered putting the program on hold until he can come in with a reevaluation so that we can have a better handle on avoiding such tragedies?
Mr. Speaker, I'm not aware that there are any areas in the province that did not participate on Saturday, but I've instructed the Deputy Minister that if there are any areas that they be put on hold, that they not proceed from this point on.
Edmonton Avonmore.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My questions are to the Minister of Social Service, Family and Social Services. Mr. Speaker, we have witnessed a decade of concern about the quality of care for children provided by the Department of Social Services. Kavanaugh reviewed child abuse in foster homes, and Tomlinson and Porter reviewed cases of foster children who committed suicide, linking their deaths with the failure of the department to provide consistent care and emotional security due to high caseloads. How long will it take this minister to accept his responsibility to protect the children of this province by lowering caseloads?
Right on. Mr. Speaker, I've already commented on the efforts that we are making to reduce caseloads. But again, I want to emphasize that it's a complex issue. It's not a simple matter of just continuing to add personnel, and certainly if that's appropriate, we'll do that in some instances. But I can only reiterate what I've said already, and that is that we are committed to reducing those caseloads, that we have made considerable progress since those particular reports have come out, and we'll continue to make progress. But we need to do it, Mr. Speaker, not alone. This isn't an issue that government can take on alone. And I want to say in the short time that I've been in this particular portfolio, how encouraged I am to see the way Albertans and community agencies and families and church and others are also pitching in to respond to these needs. And it's this kind of cooperative effort that I've talked about on many occasions, Mr. Speaker. It's this kind of joint initiative that is what it's going to take to address this societal problem in a meaningful way. I'll again emphasize that we're going to continue to do our share, that we want to continue to work in partnership with Albertans, but also in partnership with caseworkers themselves.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the primary responsibility for children in care lie with the minister, and many of the recommendations of Tomlinson and the Porter report with respect to foster children have not been met. Foster children, as we have heard today, are still being shuffled around, and high caseloads mean that social workers still don't have the time to provide the kind of care these children need and require and deserve. It's clear the system, not social workers, this government, not social workers, is failing children. How does the minister possibly expect Albertans to believe that he will solve the problem of high caseloads now when it has not been solved for over a decade?
Again, Mr. Speaker, I've talked about the progress that we are making. I can only reiterate that our commitment has been substantive, that our budget as it relates to this particular area has grown substantively in the last few years, that it was up again this year. But again, I reiterate, Mr. Speaker, that we aren't going to do it alone. I'm quite prepared, Mr. Speaker, to accept my responsibility, and this government accepts their responsibility. And we're going to continue to be leaders, and we're going to continue to make sure that we're taking the appropriate steps. Again, Mr. Speaker, I outlined some of the factual numbers for the benefit of the members earlier in this assembly. We have made considerable progress at reducing caseload. We recognize that there's more progress to be made. We recognize that there's inequities across the province, and we want to address that. But again, we're not going to do it alone. We need social workers' input on this. We need them to be a part of the solution. We need them at the negotiating table. We need to be able to continue to work with community agencies through programs like FCSS, a very unique program, Mr. Speaker, something, again, that this government has shown leadership on, something, Mr. Speaker, that is bringing into the partnership millions of volunteer hours across this province. And again, I'm convinced that Albertans, as is always the case, when they see a need, when they identify a need, when they identify a demand, we get together, we pitch in, and we address it.
Thank you. Edmonton White Mud, followed by Lesser Slave Lake.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, because of the lack of accountability of lottery funds to this House and the rather tight-lipped approach by foundation, agency, and department officials falling under the jurisdiction of the minister responsible for lotteries, this member is forced to ask these questions in this particular manner. Mr. Speaker, the information that I have received indicates that the budgeting process for the delegation now in Japan, which includes a member of this House, was rather complex, to use the exact terminology. Mr. Speaker, to the minister responsible for lottery funds, will the minister indicate to this House where the dollars for this expenditure earmarked specifically in the budget of the Wild Rose Foundation, or did the minister channel fresh dollars through the foundation to cover those costs?
Mr. Speaker, there are some 20 foundations in the province of Alberta which receive global funding for the lottery operations. One of those foundations in our province is the Wild Rose Foundation, and the Wild Rose Foundation receives $5 million a year and has for the last number of years. As an example, the Alberta Sport Council receives $9.1 million. Mr. Speaker, in 1989, in negotiations and discussions between the Federal Intergovernmental Affairs Department of our government with our sister province in Japan, the province of Hokkaido, officials from the governor's office in Hokkaido indicated that over the next several years that there was one point of interest that Hokkaido wanted to learn more about, as they had heard about the outstanding volunteer movement that we have in our province. And they indicated that they would be conveying a letter of invitation to the government of Alberta. And in March of this year, February-March of this year, I received a personal invitation from the office of the governor of the state of Hokkaido, asking me to lead a delegation to Hokkaido and to talk about the volunteer movement in our province. And I'd also mention in his letter that he'd heard about the Wild Rose Foundation. Mr. Speaker, I asked the MLA for Red Deer, who is the chairman of the Premier's Council in Support of Alberta Families, to lead such a mission. And accompanied with him is Mr. Stan Fisher, the executive director of the Wild Rose Foundation. And the Wild Rose Foundation gave to me 3 nominees from throughout the province of Alberta. One, Mrs. Martha Parker, who is the director of the Calgary Volunteer Centre, Mr. Vern Coley, who's a detective with the Edmonton City Police and who's well known for his extensive volunteer work with youth organizations. And also accompanying the group is Colleen Kelly, a lady from Red Deer who has had extensive numbers of years of volunteer work. The allocation for the expenses for this mission will be borne by the Wild Rose Foundation as part of the $5 million annual allocation they get. There is no special adjustment being made, Mr. Chairman. And as part of the reciprocal agreement, because 1990 is the 10th anniversary of the twinning between Alberta and Hokkaido, in the fall of 1990, the state of Hokkaido will be sending back a group to Alberta. Mr. Speaker, this is part of the international relations, positive international relations of the province of Alberta.
Mr. Speaker, to the minister responsible for lotteries, would the minister indicate as to whether the decision to fund the delegation was made independently by the board of the foundation, or was there some direction given by the minister's office that in fact a commitment for these dollars should be made to cover these costs?
That's a strange question, Mr. Speaker. The board of directors of the Wild Rose Foundation is responsible to the minister responsible for the Wild Rose Foundation. And the minister responsible for the Wild Rose Foundation just happens to be myself, Mr. Speaker. I have periodic meetings with all people who I am responsible for. And in most recent meetings with the Wild Rose Foundation indicated to me that it wanted to accept this invitation that was extended to me. I endorsed them to do it, asked them for the volunteers. And Mr. Speaker, the question of payment was never a question that would ever go outside of the mandate of the Wild Rose Foundation. The Wild Rose Foundation has a chairman, has a number of public appointees throughout the province. All budgeting aspects of the Wild Rose Foundation are reviewed by Alberta's Auditor General. And in fact, Mr. Speaker, the most recent publication of public accounts, has a complete review of it by the Auditor General. It's one of the outstanding organizations that we have in our province, Mr. Speaker. The Wild Rose Foundation has not only gained national attention, it's gained attention in North America, and now I'm pleased to report that the rest of the world is now understands the importance of the volunteer movement in our province. I'm just delighted that our volunteers...
Thank you, Honourable Minister. Thank you. Lesser Slave Lake, followed by Edmonton Jasper Place.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is to the Minister of Forestry, Lands and Wildlife. Seeing that this is National Forest Week, and it was really nice to see Bertie Beaver and the junior forest wardens up there, I cannot help but stress the importance... Some of us did have a childhood. I cannot help but stress the importance forestry projects are playing in diversifying our economy, particularly in northern Alberta, Mr. Speaker. As most of my colleagues can attest, unemployment and welfare is unacceptably high. And to reduce caseloads, Mr. Speaker, economic development is but one way to be able to do it. We must ensure that all projects are decided so that these economic disparities are used in decision-making. What initiatives is this government providing to ensure proper planning and allocation of our forests is occurring?
Mr. Speaker, that is a very important question when you consider that what we're looking at is not only the diversification really means stability and security for a long term, not only for communities and those jobs and the security that brings, but for the forest resource itself. So tied in with that, of course, is very important to look at forest management planning and the public process, which I'll be announcing soon, as well as the research component that will have to be enhanced and improved, as well as working with the companies even closer to make sure that the standards of reforestation are the highest anywhere in the world and will protect our forests for the long-term future.
Thank you. Some of my communities are very interested in silviculture, as the Minister knows, and with the new free-to-grow standard, which I think you've just sort of looked at in terms of reforestation, having been brought into effect May 1st, a standard which is supposed to address reforestation in a number of ways. However, there's very little information about this particular initiative in the public's eye. Would the Minister elaborate how the standard will address reforestation needs either in the seedling capability or in the facility capabilities in the future, for the future?
Mr. Speaker, there's what free to grow really means is just that. It's free to grow. It's free from the competition around it and the standard that all forest companies will have to meet in the reforestation that they do has to meet this new standard, which is a tough standard, and there's some companies that don't like having to meet that very high standard that put us at the forefront, frankly, of reforestation practices in the world. But with that comes the need for more improved genetics, more seedling capacity, and so we're expanding Smoky Lake, the tree nursery at Smoky Lake, and we're also looking at a container facility somewhere in northwestern Alberta to make sure that the free-to-grow standard, the genetic quality of the seed, and the standards that each company meets protects that forest for the long-term future.
Edmonton Jasper, please.
The Minister of the Environment indicated recently that his department had issued more than 2,000 letters of permission for the non-routine discharge of liquid effluents over the past 2 years. The existence of these letters of permission make the environmental laws and standards in Alberta virtually meaningless. It's like having a permit to ignore the speed limit or ignore drunk driving laws. I wonder if the Minister would indicate what gives his government the moral authority to issue letters which allow big companies and others to treat the law as if it doesn't exist, while it throws the book at social workers who stand up for the poor.
Environment.
To the Minister responsible for social workers or me? Is it? Okay. Well, Mr. Speaker, if I indicated 2,000 letters had gone out, I think that needs to be clarified somewhat. There are 2,000 outlets, if you will, in the province that could have received over a period of time letters of permission. These could be small municipal sewerage systems. They could be large sewage treatment systems, such as the city of Edmonton. It could be any industrial outlet. And one of the problems in answering the honourable member's question was that it would result in an administrative nightmare to go back and trace all these letters, to write all the companies, and to find out for what in some cases the situations were more profound than other situations, and it would have been an administrative nightmare, Mr. Speaker, to get that information. I advise the honourable member that if he had a specific instance or a specific case, to let me know, and we would do our best to get him the answer.
Well, I believe this minister is becoming an administrative nightmare. I mean, he doesn't know how many letters have been issued over the last 2 years. The minister did take a strong stance in saying that the public has no right to have access to that information. And I wonder if the minister can now understand why people feel violated when the government allows these non-routine discharges and won't even inform them of it after the fact. Does he understand the feeling in that regard?
Well, Mr. Speaker, you know, the honourable member, as usual, is being totally unreasonable and somewhat outrageous. From time to time, things occur in this society that require a variance. For instance, in the city of Edmonton, because of a combined system that allows storm sewage to mix with sanitary sewage, we are required to give the city of Edmonton a letter of permission to unfortunately dump into the North Saskatchewan River. So all this crud and crap, including the honourable minister's basement, won't back up and create a great inconvenience for the people of this city. Right.
Ordinarily, the chair would have ruled one of those words out of order, but since it was descriptive of what actually goes into the river, let it pass. Calgary McKnight, followed by Pincher Creek Crow's Nest.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, an increasing number of students from Asia, Africa, Latin America, and Europe are arriving in Alberta schools on a daily basis throughout the school year, especially in the two major cities, although this is certainly a rural phenomena as well. These students are sometimes illiterate in their own language and desperately need 5 to 8 years of English as a second language training if they are to succeed and compete in our province. Yet the Department of Education's policy is to provide funding only for those who are registered on September 30th, and then only for 3 years. At a recent MLA trustee meeting in Calgary, a trustee from Three Hills made an impassioned and convincing plea for a change to the ESL funding, a suggestion I've made before as well. My question is to the Minister of Education. Will the minister implement immediately a policy of 2 funding dates per school year for ESL so that all students in the program get funding?
Mr. Speaker, the honourable member is correct. The school boards receive $639 extra for each and every English as a second language student that's enrolled in the school system as of September 30 of any given year. That's $639 each year for 3 consecutive years. That's over and above the basic base funding that the provincial government provides to all school boards across the province. I believe that that goes quite a distance to meeting the needs of those young people, but I am certainly open, Mr. Speaker, to hearing from school boards about the 2 days or 2 dates per year on which funding might be provided.
That is a very hopeful answer, Mr. Speaker, and I know many school boards will be pleased to hear that the minister is open to that. Will the minister also consider increasing the grant from a maximum of 3 years per student to 5 years per student?
Mr. Speaker, I'm not entirely convinced that the responsibility lies solely in the school system. and that there are other agencies within the community that must take on this responsibility as new families with young children move into our communities across the province. And I think it's something that all agencies, including other government departments, must take a careful look at. And it's something that I will be recommending to my colleagues in Treasury Board as a program that is definitely needing review, not just for students in the school system, but for all Albertans, all new Canadians who are wanting or needing English as a second language as a program.
May, sir. I would like it to be known, because I think it's very important that the honourable member raised it, that we in Career Development are also assisting with some $6 million plus within the overall program. So I appreciate the representation that's been made, and we'll work with the colleague as well to see that those programs are in place.
Ranger Creek Crow's Nest, if there's time, Calgary Mountain View.
The Minister of Public Works, Supplies and Services. The 25,000 member body organization of the Association of Professional Engineers, Geologists and Geophysicists of Alberta is responsible for the regulation and control of the practice of engineering, geology and geophysics in the province of Alberta. In advertisements in daily newspapers across the province, they've expressed concern with proposals to shut down the construction of the Oldman River Dam, which is currently 70% complete, because of their concern for safety and well-being of the public and environment. They have stated that prolonged use of temporary facilities is an unsafe substitute for long-term river management and does not conform to sound engineering practice. And APEGA states that in the interest of public safety and protection of the environment, this association strongly recommends that the construction of the Oldman River Dam and spillways should proceed to completion without delay. My question to the Minister is, has he had the opportunity to review this advertisement and respond to it?
Mr. Speaker, this advertisement, as I understand, was placed in daily newspapers in the province of Alberta over this past weekend, and I'm certainly aware of the advertisement. I read it this morning, and I haven't responded to it. Perhaps Mr. Speaker might do that now publicly, that over the past year and a half, there have been numerous groups in the province of Alberta who basically indicated to me that wanted to know from me if they thought it was important to take out paid advertisements pointing out their message of support for the Oldman River Dam. APEGA was not one of those groups that ever talked to me about this, and I guess it's a result of the frustration of those people who are proponents of and supportive of the Oldman River Dam, that they would view the almost one-sided coverage that exists with respect to this project, and their own frustration would take them now to a point where they would want to pay for a message to be placed in a newspaper in support of the Oldman River Dam. The coverage in the last year and a half, Mr. Speaker, has been totally one-sided in favor of those who are opposed to this very important project, and I'm just delighted that the Association of Professional Engineers, Geologists and Geophysicists of Alberta point out, in the interest of public safety and the protection of the environment, that we should all work towards the conclusion of the Oldman River Dam.
Mr. Speaker, my supplementary to the Minister was to ask him if he has received any other expressions of support from public organizations or bodies in Alberta with regards to continued completion of the Oldman River Dam.
Mr. Speaker, in the last number of months, I've received numerous letters, petitions on behalf of elected councils, organizations such as the Alberta Association of Municipalities, the Irrigation Association, just numerous of them counting up, totaling well over 400,000 citizens in this province, Mr. Speaker. Numerous councils, the city of Lethbridge and virtually every municipality south of Calgary has passed a resolution and motion in their own municipal council calling for the continued construction of the Oldman River Dam and expressing their complete support in the interest of protecting and enhancing the environment, that we conclude this project, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Orders of the day.
Committee of Supply.